My name is Johannes, and I work at the City Executive Office of the City of Helsinki as a Bureau Liaison. So I am in charge of the South Eastern District in Helsinki when it comes to local participation and inclusion. But don't be fooled by the title. We'll get into what that means in just a few moments. But one could say that the current model for participation and inclusion has its roots in the Helsinki participation model, which was a big organizational and administrative reform in 2017. And in order to develop this model, residents of Helsinki were called to all different kind of workshops to talk about what kind of ways they would like to participate in decision making in Helsinki. And I think it's kind of telling that whenever you talk about inclusion or participation, it's done in this from the bottom to up perspective, where the city's residents are those who are being listened to and define the agenda. And in fact, my own job title was one concrete result which came out of this consultation session. So the residents wanted to have a borough liaison or city guide for each major district. What is then this Helsinki participation model? You could say that there are three essential principles that guide us in our work. The first one is utilizing know-how and expertise of individuals and communities. I often use a metaphor to explain this principle, which is that imagine that the city is a computer program and each resident is a beta tester of that computer program. So our point of departure is that we at the City Executive Office can't have knowledge into what would be great places to put, for example, benches or bins or any kind of ways to make the city better. But this initiative is best if it comes from the residents in one form or another. Then we try our best to enable self-motivating civic activity. This we do, among other, by giving out grants to associations that work for cohesion and just a general good feeling in certain parts of the city. So if there is, for example, an association that has a residence house in the district XYZ, they may receive funds to, for example, hire one person on a payroll from the city of Helsinki. We also work a lot for creating equal opportunities for participation. We recognize that especially in communities where another language than Finnish or Swedish is spoken as a mother tongue, there may be certain obstacles to participate. There may be other factors as well that hamper participation in one form or another. And we try our best to kind of help those communities on the road to participation. This may be done through communication in multiple different languages or working extensively with associations that gather immigrants or other kind of groups, seniors, for example, in one place. But in addition to these ones, you could say that our new strategy of the City of Helsinki introduces a fourth one as well, which is promoting dialogue among the city's residents. So our aim is these days not only to encourage people to participate in decision making, but also to try to understand one another in a better way. And we believe that these two are in a symbiosis. So if a city resident understands the needs of their community in a more profound way, then he or she will have it easier as well to participate in the public debate or to participate in the decision making of a city. So let's say, as a concrete example, that there are a few competing wishes for how to develop a certain area, and then one group really wants to have a dog park, and then another group wants something else. Now, perhaps after organizing different kind of like discussion events, the group that really wants a dog park can come to the conclusion that since there is a dog park already like 1.5 kilometers away, perhaps there are other needs which are more urgent, and then understanding of other communities' needs has been enhanced. And we believe that these kind of events can also ease different kind of frictions. Let's say that there is very rapidly a group of people, for example, asylum seekers, that moves into a certain building block, then having this kind of dialogue with one another can be very helpful. But in addition of principles, we have very concrete ways of engaging people and giving them a voice. So one is this Bureau Liaisons, which is my job. Then we have business liaisons, which are designated to listen to businesses on how the city bureaucracy could be more adapted to their needs. We have participatory budgeting, which I'm going to dedicate quite a big segment to of this presentation. And then each city division also does participation work. So let's say that a new hospital is being planned, or even an old hospital wants to improve the services that they cater to the elderly. Then it's up to that hospital to engage that community in order to get input on how they want those services to be improved. When it comes to volunteer activities, the city of Helsinki organizes, for example, events during which devices for cleaning is giving out to residents, and they might also offer like small snacks or juice in order to make this more appealing. So all kind of volunteering activities are encouraged. We open the city's facilities to its residents. We have an online service called Varamo, through which residents can reserve the sports facilities of schools, different meeting rooms in libraries, even sewing machines, which are found in libraries. So basically, if you have an association or if you are a private resident, doing such things could be as easily accessible and free as possible. We also have a feedback channel through which residents can submit any kind of questions or feedback to the city, also suggestions for improvement, and in principle, each feedback should be responded to within 5 working days. Now, of course, let's say that we are living in the winter months and we are experiencing very heavy rains of snow. Then in that case, the feedback channel will be normally overcrowded with feedback of residents wishing that their street would be the first one that would be plowed. And in those instances, the 5 working days is not going to be respected in terms of answering to the citizens or residents. Within the city council, there are several influencer bodies. So there's the youth council and like a committee for people with disabilities. And they then all have their say when it comes to official decisions, which are passed by the city council. There's also a committee for elderly people, and while certain of these committees, for example, the elderly committee, the power it exercises is maybe more soft, so it doesn't have the power to thwart a decision right away, but instead politicians may face backlash if it comes up in the public debate that they have completely neglected a recommendation by this committee for the elderly. Then a really big part of the participation and inclusion tools these days is digital participation. And a lot of our research that we do as well support this, that people in fact want to give their opinion and get their voices heard through different kind of digital apps and so forth. And this is really great. It makes participation easier than ever before. But then a personal worry that I have had is whether it creates a model of participation which is very one-sided and that doesn't take in or encourage to residents discussing together, but rather people just want to give their opinion and that's it. But I'm sure, in fact, that when it comes to this digital participation, we would have a lot to learn from you in Estonia. At least the general perception here in Finland is that Estonia is at the very forefront of all kind of digital and electronic initiatives. Before we get into talking about the practicalities of participatory budgeting, I'd like to open the floor and ask whether you have any questions about this participation model, its background, or its possible flaws. And I'm also always very open to criticism. I think it's most inspiring to talk when someone criticizes what we do, and then we can think of solutions together or somewhat. I can't see the chat right now, but maybe someone moderating the chat can give the floor or then raise any questions from there if there are any.
Ja, nii et nüüd siis üleskutse esitada küsimusi praeguse osa kohta, millest siiamaani juttu on olnud. Ja seda võib teha ka häälega. Et kui keegi soovib küsida täpsustusi, siis palun.
In fact, I see that the second point I've stopped writing in the middle of the sentence. Have you seen any way that it could be brought into action that we at the city of Helsinki have not seen? So any kind of participatory methods that we in Helsinki have somehow not seen or neglected?
Ja küsida võib ka eesti keelest, nii et ei pea üldse pelgama.
If there are no questions, we can proceed, and then maybe they will come some later. But please don't feel discouraged to ask something. Was that a question, or was someone's mic just
unmuted? I think it was just the sound from the room.
Okay, great. In that case, I propose that we proceed, and then maybe there will be some questions later on. So here are, again, like some very concrete tools for participation. And what I think is quite interesting with these is that they can basically be divided into two categories of participation. One is those that are a bit more like customer service, which doesn't give the agenda to the or give the power to define the agenda to the resident. So, for example, asking feedback on how certain building project in the city of Helsinki should be executed, which is one very common way of engaging citizens. This is good, and it's often quite popular, but then it doesn't give the power to the citizen or the resident to define the agenda. Instead, it gives like a clear area in which the residents' engagement is demanded. And sometimes we are, for example, criticized that, okay, I don't like any of these building plans, and I want to voice my opinion to just oppose all of them categorically. And then this tool doesn't that much cater to those people. If you look at the Meet the Mayor evenings, these are a kind of evening during which the residents in a certain area can ask any question to the mayor or the city division's leaders. And in this, it can be any question ranging from anything. And then it's very much giving the power of defining the agenda to the resident itself. Which I think is very kind of refreshing. It reminds one of if you've gotten familiar with an American style kind of town hall methodology. I think it comes rather close to that. What else? Then the official citizen initiative or resident initiative is another one as well. If a resident initiative gets enough signatures from residents in the city, then the city council has to officially like take it up for discussion. So sometimes they are passed, sometimes they are not, but at least then residents know where their locally elected city councillors stand on a certain issue. Now we come to my work. As Bureau Liaisons, we have one per each major district. We develop the participatory budgeting, and we offer support for different kind of initiatives and collaborations within the city. We try to connect different actors and build bridges. So if a resident, for example, contacts me with a question of he or she would like to organize an event in the city, or has a question on why, for example, a building site next to his or her house keeps making noise very late in the night, I can direct that person to the right expert within the city's bureaucracy. Internally, we also use a lot of time of researching participation and then suggesting new ways that different departments within the city can develop their work in terms of participation and inclusion. If we see, for example, that there are different associations within any district, we may kind of pair those two together so that associations and other actors wouldn't be competing with each other, but rather working together in a symbiotic manner. The time that I spent in a week can roughly be divided into three different categories: the participatory budgeting, which I'm going to come to in a second, and then directly working with residents, and then the rest is this kind of research and development work within the city administration. So now we come to participatory budgeting. Just out of curiosity, how many of you have heard of participatory budgeting before? What is participatory budgeting as a methodology? I don't know if you can communicate it in the chat or something.
Ja nüüd küsimus oli kõlas siis niimoodi, et kas keegi on kuulnud sellest lähenemisest varem?
Exactly. Just so that I know whether I will go into great detail or whether I will skim it more on the surface. Maybe I'll go into great detail, and then whether there's questions, we can continue with those. So participatory budgeting is a method for which the city allocates a certain sum of money to the residents' initiatives. So the resident can basically propose any idea, as long as they go into a certain criterion, to be executed. And these can be anything from, let's say, building an outdoor gym to awarding residents with grants for cultural activities, to enhancing this the state of a park, to anything. I think like among the craziest ideas we had a few rounds ago was to build like a art installation that would work as a landing platform for possible aliens if they come to Earth ever, or something like this. So in autumn 2020, we received 1,493 ideas, and then what usually happens is that either they are developed, or either some of them are not according to the criteria. And then let's say that if 5 residents have the idea of, let's make the area around a certain train or tramway station much more pleasurable by adding a public art or flowers or whatever, then we put all of those ideas into one, and then we call it like making the trail, the area around the railway station more beautiful. And then because they all have the same aims, they don't compete in the voting stage of the same votes, because then if people want this area to be improved, then they may have similar aspirations. Then 386 ideas proceeded until voting, and now 75 will be implemented. The money, which is 8.8 million, is allocated based on the major districts' population. So districts that have very small population get a bit less, and then districts that have big populations get a bit more. Then there was also a list of ideas which were on aimed to, or were somehow in regards to all of Helsinki. And then you can always vote for the ideas which are located in your district, and then for the general ones for the city of Helsinki. There are some criterions. So the proposal must comply with Finnish law and the city of Helsinki's values and strategy. It must be within the city's power to implement. So, for example, if there is a proposal with regards to security, this falls under the jurisdiction of the police. So it's not something within the city's power to implement. So that's why you can't really propose something along those lines. You can't either hire permanent staff, but you can hire staff that will be working for 2 years. So now, for example, there was a proposal that was accepted that called for more social work, and especially this on-the-ground social work in a certain district in Helsinki, which has seen a lot of challenges with narcotics abuse. And personally, I think that it was a kind of heartwarming that the residents, instead of wanting to have very harsh measures implemented, they wanted to approach this challenge by soft means, such as social work on the ground. The proposals cannot contradict existing zone plans. So if the zone plan says that this area is designated to be, let's say, a park or a residential area, then you can't propose something that would be indirect contradiction to that. The participatory budgeting, it's not meant to be used for grants or to support kind of ongoing work in the areas, but rather something either new or temporary or something along those lines. Each proposal can't cost more than half of the total funds which are allocated for the district in question, and you have to propose something that costs at least 35,000. We really try our best to make sure that people have equal possibilities to participate in this initiative. And a question or a topic of conversations that we have much internally is how to make sure that this doesn't end up of being money channeled to districts in Helsinki, which are already very wealthy and upper class, but instead making it possible for everyone to be able to participate. And this discussion kind of stems perhaps from the fact as well that before there used to be a certain sum of money allocated to rural districts that were experiencing social challenges, and then it changed to being this participatory fund through which this money is allocated. So you will always have people who argue for the fact that more should be made in order to make sure that this money goes to those in need, and not only those who have the capacities to propose an idea and then to market it as well. But we, in order to do this, we cooperate with different immigrant organizations and the city services, libraries, schools, daycare centers, etc., and with schools and youth houses as well. So in Oma study, anyone over 12 can vote, and if you don't have an ID or kind of an electronic way to identify yourself, which often school students, for example, don't have, you can log on with the password and username that you use to log into your school's intranet, which is called Vilma here. For those who also are not that tech savvy, we trained people at libraries, and us borough liaisons went out to different places as well and organized live voting so that people who just had an ID on them were able to cast their vote. And such services was organized in a lot of senior houses as well. I could also say that during last around 8.1% of the city's residents voted, so it was a bit under 50,000 people. So obviously it's not yet as popular as the voting percentage in the communal or local level elections. But when we did benchmarking on an international level, we saw that in Paris, for example, the voting percentage is higher, but in Madrid, the voting percentage remains lower. So we're quite happy with what we have achieved, but I think we can always do better. Another thing that I could say, just as an interesting trivia from the cooperation that we did with, for example, Russian speakers or Somali speakers, is that we came to the conclusions that these like minority groups didn't submit proposals that were like especially catered to them, but instead they submitted proposals that were like quite common in the city of which included like installing more benches or developing like the lighting in certain areas where people like to take walks in the evening or something along those lines. But instead we saw the added value in those cooperations in the fact that we offered for them events during which they could submit their proposals and where their mother tongue was also spoken. So a safe kind of environment for them to be engaged and to get more information on this initiative. Any questions? In any case, I will take a water break, so I will give you a few minutes to think.
Indeed, now we have some questions in the chat window as well.
Okay.
And, can you open it? There are some questions which are in English and some questions which are in Estonian. So maybe we can start with the English questions and then move to the Estonian ones.
Okay, so the first one I see, what is the impact you are targeting with participatory budgeting, and how have you defined it, and how do you assess? A really good question, especially since I'm always interested in how you measure the success of a project. Of course, one aspect to measure the success of this project is to just look at participation in the different stages. So how many ideas do we receive? How many votes do we receive? And then like what is the determined like success of the project? Does it, for example, after the let's say if it's a service, does it after the 2 years become so established and popular that it becomes a regular part of the city's services, or how well it fits into the already existing needs of the city? So for example, according to the marine strategy of Helsinki, the commuting between Helsinki and the island in front of it should be made easier. And then through participatory budgeting, we had a proposal that called for an electronic service boat that would go to certain islands, and it received a lot of votes and it was very popular. So I mean, we were happy with the fact that it then supported that strategy as well. Of course, like a secondary aim is that we engage more and more communities where participation has been low, but particularly vulnerable communities. So maybe like personally, I'm much less how would you say, concerned with the voting percentage among the people who live in the extremely wealthy parts of the city, who may have like secondary homes in London or Paris or whatever, and don't just feel a very strong connection to local affairs or whatever. When they want to get their voices heard, they will be aware of the channels for that. I hope this answered your question. Then there was
we have also just a small comment comes from the audience. We have one hand raising, Katri.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Actually, greetings from Lüleborg. But anyway, I would like to ask how you collect do you collect a feedback from participants? I mean, you mentioned that you are measuring some kind of success rates according to rate of participation and so on. But have you had this kind of dialogue or reflections with participants, how they find all the process or any this kind of feedback also?
Of course. So after every specific event that we do, we have a feedback questionnaire. And then after the vote has occurred, we send out through the system to the people who voted a feedback questionnaire. And after the event ideas have been submitted, we also send to all of the people who have submitted ideas a feedback questionnaire on how they think that the process should be improved. After the last round, we also sent a feedback questionnaire to all the different city services, so the libraries, the youth houses, the schools, etc., that somehow participated with regards to how the system should be improved. And in fact, this year, we're not organizing a participatory budgeting cycle or round. Instead, we're just using the time to develop it and to implement the projects. And then 2023 will be the next time. And we're working very hard in order to make the process smoother and better, and then like more easily accessible as well.
Okay, so from the chat, few more questions, and I can do the translations here.
Thank you.
How do you help those who have the idea but who don't have enough capacity to maybe make this as a reality in the end?
Super good.
Private support.
This is super good question. So first of all, we of course try to be like as clear as possible in our communication and tell them about the criteria. Then there are certain things that I can do to help them personally. So I can look at the city zoning maps, for example, and then whether I already know based on that it's going to be impossible to do, then I tell them directly, and then I can suggest that they either leave the location of their proposal open, and then it will be defined later on, or then we can search for a new location. But the location is a like particularly tricky part. And then the other part is that each idea will have to go through the city's experts approval before it proceeds to the voting phase. So quite often the city's experts will say that, hey, look, this is a really good idea, but you need to like change this in this and this way, and like this, it will be possible to be carried out. And all of this is done through like an online platform. So people, if they turned on like the email notification thingy, after submitting an idea, let's say like 2 weeks from that, they will get an email, and then the city's experts has looked at it, and then maybe they ask for minor modifications, maybe not, but we try to be as helpful in the process as possible. And obviously it's a way of people to learn more about city planning as well. So we pour a lot of resources into that process.
Mm-hmm. And again, we have one more raising hand from the audience. Ivar, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Johannes, and about your presentation. I have one question about promotion and introduction of the system to people, to citizens. What kind of channels do you use normally?
Excellent
question. It's very interesting for us how to catch interest of the citizens.
Excellent question. So we use really a hybrid way of both marketing quite extensively off and online. So there would be marketing outside on billboards, in the tramways, and on different kind of posters in the city. Then we would also be included in a newspaper that like the Helsinki newspaper that comes home to everyone. We would engage social media influencers. We would have paid promotion on Instagram and Facebook. And we will have marketing material in 7 different languages, so Finnish, Swedish, and then like the most spoken minority languages, which include Russian, Estonian, Arabic, Somali, and Farsi maybe. And what else? Then this extensive cooperation with different associations to reach people. And then we should obviously not like undermine either the work that each resident that has proposed an initiative do. So they may be promoting their own initiative on Facebook through football teams or through their schools or networks or like parents associations or anything of the sorts. And we Bureau Liaison would also like write columns in each like local newspapers, like urging people to vote, and then also as much as possible try to get coverage in the media. And often the media would be interested in, for example, what kind of proposals have been very visible this year. And last year, perhaps due to COVID, there was a lot of proposals that aimed to make it possible for people to do sports outside and just to enjoy nature and the close surroundings of their homes. People were locked up, I guess. But it's very sad because like it requires money. So another city in Finland had also tried to do this, and I think they more or less settled on putting the announcement of participatory budgeting on their website, and it's not enough. People are super busy, and like the competition for people's spare time is very hard. So it requires money and resources and just like a big push.
If I may, I have an additional one small question about a special target group, because we are looking at youth as a target group, and what your proposal? Which method is the best to engage a youth to have the voice of the youth people lower when it has been?
So this is an excellent question, and I think one good way of engaging youth is quote unquote forcing them to participate. So some teachers took it as their role to organize the possibility to vote and discuss these issues in the civics class. And in the Finnish curriculum, like teaching democracy is like one part of the curricula. So they interpreted this to be something that could be incorporated. And we see from our own research that in the schools that teachers really took it upon themselves, like the voting percentages were very high. Another way was to engage the youth centers to do it, to organize both events during which the youth could submit their own proposals, but then also occasions to vote. But then in the last cycle, it was a bit confusing maybe for some, because then the youth houses have their own participatory budgeting was a bit also at the same time. So I think clarity is always good when you try to engage youth and not to try to overwhelm them too much. This is the best advice I can give.
And now we have a question from Lotta. Lotta, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question actually as a non-Finnish speaker. It is in Estonia, we call it just participatory budgeting. Where does this OMA study come from, or what is this straight translation, as it can be said like this?
So it's just a brand name. Like we say that OMA study is Helsinki's way to execute participatory budgeting. I think it came up like in a consultation session with residents that they wanted a name that like is as appealing as possible. OMA in Finnish means mine, and study is a slang term for Helsinki, and I think it comes from Swedish because in Swedish city is stan, and then as you know, Helsinki city slang or dialect is like a mix between Finnish and Swedish and Russian, and that's why this name was came out.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I can see also a few questions from the chat conversation, and there are some amount questions. So maybe can you reflect a little bit? What is the percentage of this participatory budgeting from the total budget of Helsinki city?
So again, it depends on how many people live in that certain areas, but in the smaller areas, I think the maximum amount is something around 500,000, and then in the bigger areas, it's closer to 1.5 million, something along those lines. In the Western district where I used to be, I think it's 1.2 million, and then in the Southeast district when I'm now, I think it's like 1.4 or 1.5 million. So it depends on that. And then the total sum of all the areas and the list with proposals that are in for all of Helsinki together is the 8.8 million. Merike has asked something.
Yeah, Merike's question was about the total amount and the participatory budgeting. What is the percentage of this participatory budgeting from the total budget?
Of Helsinki's total budget?
Yes, approximately.
It's peanuts. I mean, I think the amount for participatory budgeting in Helsinki, it goes within the margin of error for the amount for the healthcare division. So it's minute, but still 8.8 million, you can do stuff with it, but it's, I mean, all in all, it's peanuts. Helsinki is a pretty big city, and even just on the payroll, there's 40,000 people. So in that aspect, it's peanuts. But on the other hand, you can see that before it was organized every year, and then the amount that was allocated was 4.4 million, and now they decided that okay, instead of doing it every year, they're going to do it every second year, and then it's 8.8 million. So I still think that people can do something with it. And to be honest, we even had some proposals where residents considered it difficult to reach the minimum amount, which is 35,000. Of course, if there's a square somewhere and you just want some nice flowers and maybe new benches, it's pretty hard to burn 35,000. But then on the other hand, when you take into consideration planning, execution, everything, and you want some nice flowers, maybe you can get up to that amount.
Very good. So we have time for a few last questions from the audience.
We can also go forward, and then there will be you
have some more slides. Yes, go ahead, exactly. Of course.
Thanks. Then just a few words about digital participation. The city is now preparing to launch a new website bringing together all the opportunities for participation. It's called the new Osallistu. Helsinki site. Osallistu in Finnish means to participate. Just to have a quick look at this Voice Your Opinion site. So here is basically a screenshot that I took of a plan that is going to be executed, and then there's always the timeline up here, and here we see that 502 comments have been voiced about this, and then the city planners will to their best knowledge and extent try to take that into consideration when they build this new climate smart boulevard in the city. Here we see from 2021 that the site got in 2021 170,000 unique visits, and then in 2020 a bit less. Smartphone is quite a popular way of participating, but desktop is still up there as well. And we really recognize that when we ask for people's opinions on this like how to improve the city, people don't go to this website by themselves. Like really the most kind of visits comes from the fact that we share it on social media or somewhere else, and then people become interested and find their way to this website. That was my slides. Now I can open for questions.
Aivar.
Excuse me. It was so interesting presentation, but gives me so many questions. I don't know why, but again, excuse, but I have a question about administrative things. How you are organizing? Do you have a special unit in the city, or all districts are working separately, or do you have one leader or unit who are working and are responsible of the budgeting?
Yes, so the city consists of 4 different units. The cultural and leisure unit, the city planning unit, the unit for social and healthcare, and then the city executive office, which is the central office. And this works under that unit, and it works within a unit called unit for participation, inclusion, and like giving advices to the residents. And our unit is directly placed under the mayor. But of course, this is something that requires a lot of cooperation between the units, and then our job is to coordinate that. But I can't, for example, in the last round of the participatory budgeting, we had one proposal that called for hiring more doctors to the hospitals for 4 years. I have no idea what that costs. So then I have to email someone, or then I have to alert someone to say that, like, please estimate the cost for this so that we can get it within the participatory budgeting. But we have a mandate from the mayor to do this. So when I approach someone and say, like, hey, I need your advice on this, there is like there's a pressure for them to cooperate as well.
Thank you very much. And now we also want to take the floor and ask one last question from here. And as we are organizing the loometalgute based on this co-creation model and ideas. So maybe the question from our side is that what is the role of co-creation in this whole process you're organizing with this participatory budgeting?
Co-creation is a mess. And if you start with something that goes straight, then you will have co-creation, which is a very creative mess. But then out of that mess comes something quite beautiful. And sometimes it can be frustrating. But if you think of all the added value that it gives, not only in terms of the result, but the lessons that both the administration and the residents learn along the way, I think it's definitely a mess worth making.
A mess worth making. That was a good idea from here. So I think we will say a very big thanks to this very inspiring presentation, and it was really great to hear. And Kadri already started, and a big applause from every participant. Yeah. We will send it to you. Woo. And we can do this as well as a as a clapping.
Thank you.
You can see some of us clapping to you. Thank you very much. And I hope that something from your presentations will be on our municipalities' presentations soon as well.
Definitely. And whenever you come to Helsinki, we can organize a meeting person to person as well. So you're most welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.